now.
Great, thanks, Allison. She's such a good moderator. But I have also turned on captions. So that's a feature within Google Slides when you're in present mode. So I'm currently presenting my slides. When I move my mouse around, there's this little bar that pops up, and I can, as a presenter, I can turn on captions. So I have done that. They're pretty good, actually. They don't do punctuation so well, so it's hard to tell where the end of sentences are, but for the most part, they get most of the words right. I'm always impressed. I'm also going to try and talk slowly, so that's a goal for today. All right. Here's our agenda, our plan for today. We did some opening moves. I've got a little bit of framing left I want to do. We're going to talk about how to create a class within Google Classroom. We're going to talk about how to add people in the 2 different roles you can have in a classroom. We're going to talk about posting and grading. I've got some tips and tricks, and then we'll wrap up at the end with a cool down, time to do some feedback, and then we've got some announcements for you. So feel free to follow along in the deck if you'd like. I'm gonna just kind of work my way through, and again, if you have any questions as we go, type them right into the chat. Allison's a master, she knows all the things. So I want to start with, this is our Department of Technology equity frame, and it really helps us ground why we do the things we do. We don't want ever to be just a thing that you're checking off, like, yep, I included it, check. We always want it to be really purposeful. And in Department of Technology, we focus on 2 types of equity. Equity of access, meaning that students have access to devices and to apps and tools that they can use for learning. And then we also focus on equity of opportunity. And equity of opportunity comes down to the kinds of things that students are asked to do with technology. And so it's, you know, there are very different tasks you can ask students to do with the same tool. I talked about Google Docs in a session earlier today. It's a word processing tool, very similar to Microsoft Word. And Google Docs, you can have students write a paper in there, but you can also have them, you know, create a project proposal, do some research, write up a proposal based on that research of the best way to solve a problem. Well, that's a very different task. Using the same tool, a very different task. And so you just want to kind of think about, you know, as you're going through the year, you know, not every assignment that you give in Google Classroom is going to be a wow, amazing, all these things using different tools kind of assignment, and that's okay. It should not be. That is exhausting for you and for the students to be using all these different tools all the time. But as you're designing your lessons, as you're working through units, as you're thinking about how you're going to assess their learning, you know, kind of think about what are some different opportunities I could give to students to show their learning in different ways. Can I give them choices? Can I give them different tools to use? That's the kind of the thing that you really want to think about within Classroom. And there's features within Classroom that really help you give opportunities to students. That equity of opportunity really falls upon you who get to design those learning experiences for students. So we're going to start with the very, very basics with creating your class. Again, if you've never used Google Classroom before, never fear. It, like I said, very easy to get up and going, very easy to run at a base level. And then there's, as you feel more and more comfortable with it, there's lots and lots of options to help you kind of, you know, flex your Google Classroom muscles. So to create a class, you would first go to Google Classroom. And like I said, you have the slide deck later. So if you want to just listen now, if you want to try and do it along with me, that's also totally fine. Up to you, however you like to learn. You can always come back to this later if you're ready to follow the steps later. But there are 2 ways to get to Google Classroom. You can go to classroom.google.com, type that right into your address bar. That's going to bring you to Google Classroom. You can also use the Classroom button in the waffle or the Google Apps Launcher. So that's that little 3x3 grid. You find it up in the corner, up the right corner of Gmail. It's up in the right-hand corner of Google Drive, which is like a giant digital filing cabinet. But you find it up there and you'll find the Classroom icon. Fun fact, you can actually rearrange your icons in your waffle. So like Classroom actually is pretty far down the list, but I wanted it higher. So I just like clicked on it and held it down and dragged it up to where I wanted it to be. So you can actually rearrange. So when you click on the waffle, you may not see Classroom here. You may not see Gmail here. They might be further down, but you can rearrange them. So, but either way, whether you go to classroom.google.com or you click on the waffle and click on the Classroom icon, they'll both take you to the same place. And that's your Google Classroom homepage. And that looks kind of like this. You'll probably see some tiles on here, and those are classes that you are added to, either as in a teacher role or in a student role. I had to use a dummy account to get a space where there were no tiles. But most people are enrolled in at least one classroom. So you would see tiles along here, along this space. But to make a class, you just find the plus button and you're gonna choose create class. Very simple, could not be any easier. And when you create a classroom, it's gonna bring up this box. It's gonna ask you for some different information. I like to have a sandbox classroom. A sandbox is a technology term for a place to play. And so a lot of times coders will have a sandbox where they can like try out new code, but it doesn't break the thing they're actually working on. And so I like to have a sandbox class where I can try out some new things, but you could also just have your class and try out new things with your students, also totally fine. But you have to give it a name. You'll see that field is required. The section, the subject, and the room number are all totally optional. You can also change these later. So if you start with a sandbox classroom and then you're like, actually, this is looking really good. I want this to be my real class. You can, in the settings, you can actually go in and rename your sandbox classroom to what your class is actually going to be called for the year. So these fields can be edited or changed or added later. And then you just click that create button in the corner. It's going to take like a minute or so. It's going to make you a classroom. And it's going to look, your classroom's going to look like this. All Google Classrooms are set up the same way. They all have the same spaces. They all have the same areas. There's the first area you're brought to is called the stream. That's this one here. I can tell I'm on the stream because there's this thick line that sits underneath the word stream. The next section is classwork. And if I click on classwork, that dark or that thick line will actually move under classwork. So I can always tell where I am by looking for that thick line. But you have the stream, and that's where you've got announcements and things like that. That's the first place everybody is taken to in classroom. When students enter your class, the first place they're always sent to is the stream. Then on the classwork tab, that's where all the stuff is. So that's where your assignments are gonna be. That's where if you have readings or videos for them to watch, those will all go on classwork. That's where all that stuff is. The people tab is next, and that's where you work with the people in the classroom. And so you can add or remove people there. We'll talk more about what exactly it means to add or remove people in a second. And then you have the grades area. The grades area by default is off. Students cannot see it. They don't know it exists. It's not even there for them. And I would recommend leaving it that way. In SFUSD, students get their grades through Synergy. And that's the place where, well, for the most part, elementary is a little bit different, like lower elementary is a little bit different. But middle school, high school students go to Synergy Gradebook to get their grades. And so instead of trying to keep grades right in two places, I would just leave that grades tab off, and then students can look in Synergy for their grades. Moving a little further over to the right, this gear or cog button is your settings for this particular class. That's where you change the name if you wanted to, or add a room number. That would all happen in there. I'm gonna kind of work my way around clockwise. Over here, I've got this select theme or upload photo. Right now you can see I've got like a bit of a nautical theme going on here with a I don't know what that's called, a steering wheel, I guess. You'd find on a boat's steering wheel. I feel like that has a name, but I don't know what it is. But you can change that. You can also upload a custom photo if you want to. I will give you a heads up that if you upload a photo, a lot of times Google makes the photo darker for readability. So I've had some teachers be a little frustrated that their picture is darker when it gets uploaded, but that's because Google does that automatically to make the white letters easier to read. But you can totally upload your own picture. But again, I'm gonna kind of work clockwise here. So I'm gonna go over here to this upcoming section. Again, the stream is the first place the students are brought to, and so this is one of the first things that they see, this upcoming section, and that depends on the due dates you set for assignments. Due dates that are coming up soon will show up right here, really easy for students to see. And then up here in the top left corner, we have this, I call it the stack of pancakes, because the waffle is on the right side and the stack of pancakes is on the left side. It's the 3 horizontal lines. Technically, it's called a drawer menu, because when you click on it, it's going to pop out a drawer from the side. And we'll talk more about that drawer later. But that's generally what your classroom is going to look like. And again, all classrooms have a stream, all of them have a classwork tab, and all of them have a people tab. And you can't add any extra tabs. It's not really flexible in letting you change the structure of classroom, which is nice because students will experience the same structure in every Google Classroom class that they join. Let's talk about adding people. There are 2 kinds of people you can add. You can add co-teachers, and we recommend doing that, adding anyone that it makes sense to add as a co-teacher. That's likely going to be your administrator, your principal, your assistant principals. You're going to add as co-teachers to give them access to your class. You might also want to add your grade level team or your department teams, collaboration partner, somebody you work really closely with. You might want to add paraeducators. The really cool thing about being a co-teacher is that you can use stuff from any class where you're a co-teacher. So for example, I used to teach Spanish. I had a lady that I worked with very closely. She taught Spanish 1, I taught Spanish 1. And so what was really nice is that in classroom, she made me a teacher in her class and I made her a teacher in my class. And then we could reuse assignments from each other's classes. So if she did a really cool assignment, because I'm a teacher in her class, I can actually reuse that assignment in my class. So it's also just really great for collaboration. You know, it gives people, it can give paraeducators and administrators access to the classroom that they need. But if you're, again, adding those teachers that you are collaborating with, you're adding other people in your grade level that teach the same stuff as you, or the people in your department that teach the same stuff as you, then you can share stuff and kind of, you know, divide and conquer the work. You can have, oh, sorry, my cat is trying to climb onto this. You can't come up here, bud. You can have up to 20 co-teachers per class. Any more than that, and you'll get an error that says you can't add them. So you can have up to 20. That's usually enough, but every once in a while, especially elementary teachers, sometimes that's not quite enough because of the grade level team and administrators. And sometimes they add specials like music or PE teachers. Sometimes they add it as co-teachers, but usually 20 is enough. And here's all the things that a co-teacher can do. So anybody who's got that co-teacher role in your class can see all student work and grades for that class. So they can see any assignment students are working on. They can see any score you've given students on any work they've turned in. Any co-teacher can add, edit, and delete pretty much anything in the classroom. Announcements, items, people. They can add an announcement. They can delete an announcement. They can add an assignment. They can delete an assignment. They can add and remove people. They've all got the same general powers. You as the main teacher don't have any extra special powers that they don't have. Any co-teacher can view or add private comments on assignments. So assignments can have private comments between any co-teacher and the student whose assignment it is. And any co-teacher can see the conversation that's happened so far, as well as add another private comment. So, and then co-teachers can also reuse posts, like I said, from other classes. So again, if you're collaborating with someone else who teaches the same grade level or the same subject as you, if your teachers in each other's class, then you can actually share assignments between each other and kind of, again, like divide and conquer. You don't have to make as much stuff because you can, like, you know, take turns or trade off. When you add a co-teacher, they get an email invitation to join. They do have to accept that invitation before they can be a co-teacher in the class and do any of those things. So that's they do have to go ahead and accept that invite. They can accept it either in that email. There's a join button right inside that invitation email, or they can also go straight to Classroom, either through the Waffle or classroom.google.com. You're going to see the tile for your class, and it's going to have a join button right there. So if they can't find the email because they have too many emails, then they can also go to Classroom and join that way. But they do have to join in order to be considered a co-teacher in the class. Okay, I wanted to pause here and do a chat check. If you were with me in my earlier sessions, this will seem familiar, but I'd like you to go ahead and type into the chat, who are some people in your school site that you might want to have co-teacher access to your classroom and students' work, just to kind of take a chance to think and process. You can type right into the chat, who are some people that you might want to add. And if you don't know anyone yet, that's also totally okay. There will be more chat checks where you'll be able to contribute. My coach, that's a really great idea. If you have a teacher coach, someone who's coaching you through induction, you can absolutely add them. That's a great way to kind of get some feedback and input on your work. I saw somebody talk about ELD teachers. Absolutely. IEP. The IEP team might be really useful to show. Literacy coaches, arts coordinators, paraeducators for sure. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Any assistants. RSPs will probably be co-teachers in other classes. Yep. Somebody said something about family. I wouldn't add family members here because, again, that gives them access to all students' work and they can post things in your class. So I would not give family access. I wouldn't add any family members here. But there's actually a place where you can add family later. So again, co-teachers are people who can see pretty much everything that you can see in classroom. different students' assignments, grades, all that kind of stuff. I would not add family members to that.
Jessica, I have a question. Tamana, and I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, so forgive me, please, or correct me, Tamana. She or he, they are not able to find a create class button from the drop down from the plus sign. Is there anything that you can think of? And this is within the SFUSD account.
Yeah, this is a great question. So for the most part, there's a back end side of Google. It's called the Google Admin Console, which I always think of like a deck with like lights and buttons. That's not really what it looks like, which is unfortunate. But that automates who has access to create a classroom. So for example, students are not allowed to create classrooms because only the people in the classroom could see, and students could have a space where inappropriate things are happening. So students aren't allowed to create classrooms. They won't see that create button either. And so we try to automate that any adult in the district can create a classroom, but sometimes people, just for whatever reason, we have no idea why, they get missed and they don't end up with that ability to add a classroom. So if you know someone who should be able to create a classroom, sometimes it happens with like literacy coaches or people like that aren't like standard general classroom teachers. So if you know someone, or if you are that person that doesn't have that create classroom button, but you should because you're an adult in the district, you can submit a help desk ticket, and you can do that at help.sfusd.edu. There's a button in the top that says submit a new request, I think is what it says, and you can explain there that I don't have the ability to add a classroom. Please add that to my account. And it's the matter of just adding you to a list. It's a very easy, quick turnaround. So if that's you, or again, if you know somebody, you're working with somebody this year that's like, I can't create a classroom, they can submit a help desk ticket as well. Thanks, Allison, for bringing that up. That's a great question. Okay. Thank you for contributing to my chat. All right, chat check. It's a little bit too much of a tongue twister for me. Staying on the theme of the people tab, you also add your students. You can invite students via email from their email addresses. So on that people tab, you'll see a space to invite students, and you can actually copy and paste a list all at once. Your principal can give you a list of all your students' email addresses, and so you can actually select that whole list, copy it, and paste it in. But again, the same thing, students are going to have to open that email and click join the class, or they're gonna have to go to Classroom to join. So if you have a student where, if they haven't done it yet, it says like invited in little letters next to their name in that people tab, you'll be able to see that they're not fully, they're still just invited, they're not like fully into the class. And if you have a student that's still invited and still invited and still invited, and you don't see them, that invited going away, that means that they need to join via that invitation via email, or they need to go to Classroom. Again, they'll see your class's title and they gotta click join to be in the class. They can't see anything in the class until they join it. You can also have students mass add themselves by entering a class's join code. There's a little unique code for every single class that students can type in and join the class. So that is one way. When I taught in the classroom, granted we were in person, that was one of the things we did, like on the second day of school, is I had everybody go to classroom.google.com, click the plus sign, join a class, and type in the code for my class period. And that was like everybody in at once without having to mess with email invitations or anything. But that also can be, that can be tricky too if a student is gone, or if they aren't, they're having a hard time with the instructions, things like that. So there's two ways to add students, and it's kind of up to you which way you think is going to work best for your students. I will give you a heads up that join codes can be used by anyone to join your class. So if you're going to use the join code, I would recommend once you have your students enrolled, like most of them are enrolled, I would go ahead and disable that join code. You can do that in the settings, that little gear or cog icon button we saw up in the upper right-hand corner of the class. You can disable the class code in there, because students, depending upon how nefarious your students are, they could share that join code with anyone, and anyone can join your class. But once you disable that code, that join code just doesn't work anymore. It tells them that class doesn't exist. So I would say if you're not gonna use the join code, disable it, or if you're done using the join code, disable it to keep your classroom secure so that others aren't joining it. And then it's really important to make sure students join with their SFUSD account. Again, because anyone can join your classroom with that join code, it's easy sometimes for students to be logged into a personal account and have trouble, that they get signed into your classroom with the wrong account. So you just want to make sure that you help any families that need it with making sure that they're logged in with their SFUSD account. If you're going to use the join code, make sure they're logged in with SFUSD before they enter that join code. There is also a Google Classroom integration where Google Classroom will talk to the Synergy gradebook, and that will sync your students for you. I will say that if you've never used Classroom before, the integration can be a little tricky and a little maybe surprising is a good word, that sometimes they'll do things that you just didn't expect. So we generally recommend the integration for a little more advanced, like more intermediate users of Classroom. But if you are, there are people out there that are like adventurous and like, I'm going to try it out and we'll see what happens. I'm not going to worry about it if something ends up being funky. You absolutely can certainly use the integration. There's no like test or requirement. You have to have been using Google Classroom for any amount of time to use it. So if you are up for adventure, you can also use that integration right from the get-go, and it will sync your students for you. As students change or leave, it'll adjust the roster accordingly. So that integration can also be used to add and maintain your students. Okay, another chat check. There is, when you're having students get added into your classroom, there's all those things, right, at the beginning of the school year that you're doing the housekeeping things and getting people set up and that kind of stuff. And so I just wanted to give a space for you to think about like how you could build getting students enrolled into your classroom into a lesson or into an activity in the first week of school. And again, just a chance to share some ideas. If you're like, I have no idea, that's also totally fine. Just you can sit back and kind of see what other people type into the chat. But is there a way to kind of like make that housekeeping type of item into more than just like, okay, everybody, let's sit here into this piece. Like, how could you build it into a lesson or an activity within that first week of school? Yeah, you could have students answer a question about themselves. So that like the instructions are that you're getting into the Google Classroom, and then the first thing you do is answer the question right inside there. That builds up a great, that like habit. Because again, at the beginning of the school year, you are also forming routines with your students. So much like how, in a physical classroom, you might have had like, when you're turning in an assignment, it goes in the blue basket. If it's late, it goes in the green basket. Much like you would have trained those things, in your students through repetition and reminders, the same thing can happen here. And so you can have, a resource scavenger hunt. That's a great idea. If that's age appropriate for your students, having them do like a scavenger hunt to like, okay, find classroom and like enter this code to be in the classroom. And, you can have them do that kind of stuff. And again, it's part of that routine that, I'm having you log into Classroom and then maybe doing a thing inside a classroom. So they're trying to get used to Google Classroom. Partnering with a tech teacher. Yep. If you have families that are having a hard time getting into Google Classroom, a tech teacher can certainly be useful and helpful to you. These are great. Thank you. All right. Love it. I love getting all sorts of ideas from you. I do want to touch briefly on email notifications. Classroom will email you pretty much anytime you sneeze. And so you can actually adjust what notifications, what emails you get from Classroom. I recommend definitely taking a moment to check this out. And if you want to leave them all on at first and kind of see what happens and then be like, oh, that email is helpful, but that one is not, you can kind of then determine what you want your settings to be. But there's 4 steps. And again, you can come back to this deck and check out these steps anytime. But basically you go into your classroom wide settings. So remember we had that little gear or cog in the corner that was just for that class. Well, if you go into the pancake, or the stack of pancakes, I saw someone said it, they've heard it called the hamburger menu. In that stack of pancakes at the very, very bottom, you'll find a settings button, and that's your settings for all of Google Classroom. But really, it's mostly just your email settings. And so you can adjust the switches. Blue is on, so you can see in this picture here, it's a little small, but that blue one is on. If I clicked it, it would turn off, it would turn gray. And then you can also turn off emails for specific classes. So again, if you're adding, a teacher collaborator, someone else that you're working with really closely to maybe share lessons, you might want emails from your class about when students turn things in late. So you might want to leave that setting, that when students turn things in late, I get an email. You might leave that setting on, but you might want to just turn off all emails from that other teacher's class. You're not getting notified when their students are turning stuff in late. Fiddle with those settings to find what's going to be best for you. You also can just turn them all off, and that's also totally fine. Whatever's going to work best for your workflow. Okay. I do want to touch on families and classroom. I know this was brought up a little bit earlier. There is no parent or family login for Classroom. It's a little bit confusing. Again, the gradebook has parent view, and you want parents to get logged into parent view. But the Google Classroom, there's no like Google Classroom for parents or like parents, that doesn't exist. And we generally don't recommend that you add parents or families as students either, because it really doesn't tell them what they want to know. They want to know, is my student have anything missing? What's coming up in the classroom in the next week? And you know, what are some upcoming due dates, or what are some things that have happened? Like what were the announcements posted in the class? And adding them to Google Classroom as a student doesn't really tell them all those things. So if they see Google Classroom, you know, a student view of Google Classroom, they can ask their student to log in. They can also use their student's login. Their student's login is listed in parent view, another reason to get them into parent view. But you as a teacher instead can turn on Guardian email summaries. And what that does is that sends families either a daily or weekly email with updates about the classroom, and it's tailored to their particular student. So it sends an email with any missing work for their student, any upcoming due dates for their student, and any announcements that were posted in the classroom since the last time it emailed. So they can choose if they want it daily or weekly. If it's weekly, it'll be any announcements posted in the last week since the last time they got the email. If it's daily, it's any announcements posted in the last day since they got the last email. You can kind of see a picture of it here, over here on the left side. And so you can see that the student work, anything missing from last week, and this class is US history, and this class is English and American literature. So even if they're in multiple classes, pull it all together into one email for them. Any co-teacher in a class can add up to 10 guardians per student. You can get Guardian email addresses from Synergy or from parents themselves. You can certainly ask families what's the best email address to send this to. And it talks to all the other classes that the student is enrolled in. So you might go in and see that some of my students have Guardian emails already. That's because another teacher with them in their class added that Guardian email. So again, it like keeps it across the platforms. Guardians, when they're added, they get an invite. They say it says you're going to receive emails from this about this student. Is this your student? And they have to say yes. And sometimes they have to check their spam folder. Sometimes it will go to spam. But once they say yes, this is my student, then they'll get the emails either again daily or weekly. I have a link here, and I'm going to have Allison go ahead. Oh, she already did it. She's so good. She put it in the chat. But this is a page for families. You can give this information to your families. There is an auto translate feature in this web page that will translate the information for families that maybe have a language other than English that they prefer. Guardian email summaries are only available in English at this time, so the weekly email they get will be in English, unfortunately. But we've had pretty good luck with families using Google Translate alongside of it to copy the text in the email and paste it into Google Translate and translate it into their language. That's been pretty successful so far. Google Classroom does not have a language translation option at this time. I know that we're going to see a lot of changes to Classroom over the next 6 months because Google's been largely focused on Google Meet, the video conferencing tool for meetings with students, and they're starting now to shift their focus to Classroom now that Classroom is getting much more heavily used than it did before. So I imagine we'll start seeing some language options within Classroom, but they are not there at this time. But again, this link right here, this family page about Guardian email summaries, Allison put it in the chat. That is, again, a resource you can give to families about Guardian email summaries. It has a picture of what the invite email looks like. It mentions that they might need to check spam. It has information about what is inside that email summary. So if you do have to turn it on. So that's, again, in that little cog or gear icon up in the upper right-hand corner of your class. You have to turn it on for your class. I believe when you turn it on in one class, it says, do you want to turn it on in all of them? And I always just like, yes, I don't want to go to each class and turn it on. But you can turn it on a class-by-class basis. So that's kind of up to you how you want to do that. But it does have to be, you do have to turn it on. By default, it doesn't happen. Okay. Whew. Let's talk about posting and grading. So we've kind of talked about some like the setup kind of stuff. And this is like the actual like, let's do things in Classroom, right? So you can add content via the classwork tab. Remember, there were those 3 spaces. We have the stream for announcements. The classwork tab is where all your stuff goes. And then the people tab is where you deal with all the people. We've been talking about the people tab for the most part. The classwork tab is where all of your stuff goes. And it's really important to start by adding topics first. Topics organize your page. So when you're on your classwork tab, you'll see a big create button. And when you click on it, you get these options. And topics are the first thing you should go through and add. I like to do topics by dates. That's the thing that I really, I feel like that's really useful for students in a distance learning model, that they can really figure out like, okay, that's the stuff for this week. So I usually do my topics by dates. And, you know, back when I was a teacher in a physical classroom with students, I oftentimes did it by chapters or by units, but I think that's really hard in distance learning. Like, how does a student know if we're in chapter 2 or chapter 3? I don't know. And so dates can make it really easy and obvious for them to be able to know, like, oh, this is the stuff happening this week, the stuff I need to do this week. You also want to be strategic with what students see first on the page. So studies show that most people will not scroll down on a page. Whether or not you feel like they should scroll down on a page, they don't. And so you want to think about, you can kind of see here that my topics, it's a little small, but they actually go backwards in time. So that this is an old screenshot, but the most current thing is actually on the top. That April 27th through May 1st is the most current stuff. And then as they scroll down, they're going to see stuff back in time. So you can drag and drop your topics and rearrange them as you see fit. But you might want to, again, be strategic with like, what do I want them to see first on the screen? I don't know that I want them scrolling all the way to the bottom to find the new stuff. I think I want the new stuff at the top. So again, you can kind of, again, be strategic with where things end up on that page. And you'll see that the topics then also show up here on the side. So it can make it really easy to find stuff from the previous week. If a student were to click on this, for example, this April 27th through May 1st over here on the left, if they were to click on that, it would filter the page, the classwork page, so it's only the stuff that's sitting under that topic. So it's a nice way also for them to navigate through the different weeks if they need to like go back to a previous week and find something. Somebody, I just saw just a second ago, somebody asked if you can pin things. Yes, kind of. So these two things up here at the very top of this screenshot, I've kind of like pinned to the top. And those are things basically that have no topic. So when you're creating an assignment or adding a question is a thing you could add. When you're creating that, it asks you which topic to put it under. And one of the options is no topic. And no topic means it'll sit up here at the very top. Again, you'll want to be strategic about what you have at the top, because if I have a bunch of things at the top, they may not scroll down to see what the stuff is for this week or the stuff is for this chapter. So I wouldn't use that too much. You can see like I've got an application to redo assessments. That was something that I wanted that at the top that they could always find it. And so I chose no topic when I added that. Great question, thank you. So a little bit more, like we said, topic organizes your page. You can also create, when you click on that create button, you'll get an option to create an assignment. That's for students turning something into you. So usually they're doing something and they're going to submit it back to you. You can only obviously submit digital things through Google Classroom, but it doesn't mean that the only things you can assign have to be digital. So I could have an assignment where I ask students to take pictures of things in their house that are round. Go around and take a picture, find something in your house that's round and take a picture. And they could submit that picture. So, although the actual submission itself is a digital thing, the photo is a digital thing, the action I had them do wasn't actually a digital thing at all. So you can kind of get creative in the way you think about assignments, that it does have to be a file or a picture or a video or something that they turn in. But the actual work itself does not have to be a digital project. There are also some pretty powerful sharing options when you add Google files. So if you're adding a Google Docs, which is like Word, Google Slides, which is like PowerPoint, if you're having students attach those things, or if you're attaching those things to the assignment, maybe I have a template I want them to use, there's some pretty powerful sharing options built into Classroom for Google Files that can allow Classroom to make copies for you, where you can say, I'm going to create this, I talked about in an earlier session, like a diagram of a heart, that students are labeling the diagram of the heart in Google Drive. I can create essentially the original, the template, and then I can say, hey, Google Classroom, you make a copy for each student, and then we'll automatically do that. I don't have to sit and make 35 copies or 150 copies, however many students I have. I don't have to make copies for everybody. Google Classroom will do it for me. And students then can also only see their own copy. So it's really streamlined and nice. I highly recommend checking that out. A question, again, that's kind of the next thing down here on the list. A question allows you to ask one short answer or one multiple choice question of students. If you want to ask more than one question, I'd recommend using Google Forms, just because that's going to, again, put multiple questions into a form. It's like kind of like a survey is what it feels like. But if you're just asking them one thing, like, asking them to reflect on something or asking them to choose, maybe they're voting on what the activity is going to be Friday, like that, you can actually use the question feature inside of Classroom. You can set up lots of different things, whether students can see what each other have written, whether students can reply to each other, whether they can see a graph of the results. You can adjust all those things on the question. A material is a little bit less commonly used. It's something for students to look at or read, but I would be hesitant about adding a lot of materials. So again, when you click that create, I can add a material. I would almost say that if you want students to read something and then like reflect on it, or read it and then do something with it, or like watch it and do something with it, I would actually just make one assignment and attach the reading and the thing you're doing to the assignment. I wouldn't have a separate material for the reading and then a separate assignment for the doing. So that's just kind of something I would say that materials probably won't get used very often. This might be what you use like for your Zoom link, or if you had like a syllabus or something that you need to refer back to. For example, that application I had to redo assessments, I posted as a material. And so you might, but I would think that would be pretty rarely used, just because you don't want to clog up that page with lots of extra things. And then like we talked about, you can reuse posts from other classrooms. So when I click that create button, you'll see I've got this option right here to reuse a post. I can choose another classroom where I'm a teacher, and I can grab any assignment in there. So it's pretty easy collaboration with other teachers. Okay. I was going to give a little bit of time to play with adding one of the 4 main things, but I'm also thinking that some of you I know are just listening and aren't really into Classroom yet. So I think I'm going to kind of skip over that piece, but I do want to talk about this item down here. When you're in any Google tool, honestly, any Google tool, look for down arrows and then the 3 vertical dots, sometimes called the snow person menu. Look for those buttons, because those are where you'll find extra settings and options. And so a lot of times, like the ability to differentiate. For example, when I create an assignment, I can choose which students get that assignment assigned to them. That maybe I only want a small group of students, or maybe I need to have a modified assignment for an IEP student. I only want that IEP student to get this assignment. I can choose which students get specific assignments. And then if a student isn't assigned that assignment, they can't see it. So in the example of the student with an IEP, I can check only that student, that only that student's going to get the assignment, and none of the other students will see that that assignment exists. They won't even know that there's a modified assignment for that other student. And that's something that there's a down arrow, and then you can choose which students. So I would say that when you're in Classroom, one of the best ways to learn any tool is just to kind of play with it. Again, that idea of like creating a sandbox, like make some assignments, click on some down arrows, choose specific students. You can actually schedule a post. So I can, if I'm really on top of my game, I can, make the assignment that's going to go out tomorrow on Tuesday. I can actually make it tonight and then schedule it. Then at 8 a.m. Classroom will post it for me. So you can schedule things, and that's under a down arrow. Again, that we talk about making copies of something for each student, that's under a down arrow. So you just want to kind of look for different options, for different things, different like extra settings in those down arrows and that snow person, that 3 vertical dots button. Okay. And then I just, again, while we're talking about assignments, touch base back on that equity of opportunity, really thinking about within Classroom, how can I give students an option to collaborate? You can assign an assignment just to a group of 3 or 4 students and have them work on it together. That's something you can do within Classroom. So you can build in collaboration, even though you can't, normally in like a physical class, you might have said, okay, you 4 are going to go sit in that corner and work on this piece, or like you 4 are going to come to this table and work on this piece. You don't have that, but you can still mimic that inside a Classroom by using some of these features. How can you create learning opportunities with media literacy? How can you give students opportunities to be creative? How can you help them become a little bit more resilient and like build up some of that grit that, with Classroom might be a brand new tool for them, but how can you help them, be willing to keep trying and to keep, I'm going to keep looking for, the way to do this. And then also that reflection, how can you use Classroom to have them like reflect on their work and keep improving and keep getting better and really developing that growth mindset. I've linked a couple things here for you. I've linked our graduate profile is the district's vision for what students, what skills students should have by the time that they leave SFUSD, by the time they're done with all of their years here and they're graduating and they're headed off into the world. The graduate profile are the things that we work to develop in students. I've also linked in my teaching and learning with Google Tools deck If you were with me earlier today, I already presented on this. I'm presenting on it once more again tomorrow. I think it's at this time slot tomorrow. But I linked the deck in there again to give you some ideas of different ways to use Google Tools. Google Tools work really well within Classroom because Classroom is also from Google. And so, you know, if you're thinking about ways, again, to do creativity, to do collaboration and that kind of stuff, I would check out that Google Tools deck just to get some ideas. And then I also included the Google for Instruction website. This is a page under our Google resources that I created that focuses on instructional practices. So it says, you know, like, oh, you want to do collaboration? Here are the Google tools that work really well for collaboration. Oh, you want to do formative assessment? Here are the tools that work really well within Google to do formative assessment. Oh, you want to do group work, which can sometimes be different than collaboration. How do you assess different parts of group work? Here's some resources for Google resources for how to do group work. So feel free at some point in time again to check that out. You're going to get bombarded with information. Remember, one of our norms is to take what you can today and come back for more later. And you know, maybe these things are things come back more for later. Don't feel like you have to master everything today. Okay, let's do a chat check. I've got two options for. So if you would go ahead and type which letter question you're answering before you type your answer, that will help us know which one you're answering. But question A, what could you have students do in groups in classroom, in your classrooms? Like just some ideas. You're not committing to anything. I'm not going to check in with you in a month and be like, did you do the thing you said? But just like kind of, you know, brainstorming some ideas. What could you have students do in groups in your classroom? And then question B, what learning activities could you ask students to do in classroom that draw on their creativity specifically? So yeah, go ahead and put the letter first, whichever one you're answering, and then type your answer so that we can get some ideas. We can, you know, collaborate together already. These are great ideas. Somebody talked about using posters in groups, doing book clubs in groups, smaller groups for remediation or extensions. Those are great. As far as creativity, I saw someone who talked about submitting photographs of their work, of their artwork in particular. Being able to make an online About Me page. That's a really great way to let students really show themselves and who they are. It's funny I feel like when you first say like, you can do anything, right? You like open up, you're like, just make something about you. And sometimes I think first they're like, yeah, but like, what's the template? Or like, what do I have to have on it, right? And once you can get them to be like, no, really, like anything. Just you do you. Like make a slide that's you. The things they come up with just are wild and incredible, and I never would have thought of most of them. I'm seeing some suggestions to do group portfolios of projects, video presentations, to brainstorm together in groups. Really great. Oh, an activity where people draw what they dream. And a Google Drawing shared activity could be really neat. That could be really neat. I wanna come be in your class. I wanna draw what I dream. Yeah, lots and lots of great ideas. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody. I always feel like when you get ideas from somebody else, you can kind of like start that idea, and it's almost like a seed that you get that idea, and then you can kind of grow into what's going to make the most sense for you and your kids. So yeah, just start finding some seeds, some people that help give you seeds. Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about turning things in. So Google Classroom will tell you how many students something is assigned to, and then how many have turned it in. And that number, the number of assigned and the number of turned in, if you add them together, that always adds up to the total number of kids in your class. So they're considered assigned until they turn it in. And so like you'll see that if another student turns it in, that assigned number goes down and the turned in number goes up. But in order for it to count as turned in, students have to click the turn in button. And that's going to be really tough at first, you know. Again, similar to in a physical classroom, you're going to have to develop routines that you might have to remind kids a bunch to click that turn in button. It does very clearly say turn in, but you know, it's something they can easily forget to do. They do their work and then they close the window and they forget to go back to classroom to turn it in. So again, that routine, you know, much like you would have in your physical classroom, that, you know, Work gets turned into the blue basket when you're done. Work gets turned into the blue basket when you're done. Turn it in the blue basket. Like you have that repetition, you're probably going to do the same thing with Classroom, just training them in the way that you want them to use Classroom. Something that's good to know is once they click that turn in button, Google Classroom behind the scenes in the background changes the permissions. It takes away a student's ability to edit it. So much like if they gave you a piece of paper, they can't write on it anymore. Same idea. It switches and it takes away their ability to edit and gives it to you. And then you can return it back to them. Again, just like if you handed the paper back to them, then they can write out in it again. So if you're having students turn something in, but you want them to like keep working on it, you give them some feedback, you want them to keep working on it, you do have to go and return it. But there's a big return button, you can't miss it. So that's a lot of times people, teachers will like grade the work and then return it. But students do get an email that you returned it, which is nice, but you can also think about, you don't have to put a score on something to return it. So it's, you know, you can also think about the fact that maybe I want to return it and have them work on it some more. Maybe it's not done yet. They turned in slide 1. Great, I've checked you off, you turned in slide 1. I'm going to return it so you can go back and now add slide 2. You can kind of also think of it that way. But they, again, that sometimes when you see that students have something assigned, oh my goodness, close the window. Sometimes when you see that students are still under that assigned category in Classroom, they aren't under the turned in category, it might just be that they didn't click the turn in button yet. So again, something just kind of like keep in mind. I saw somebody asked if you can create a time-sensitive assignment. Absolutely, you can put due dates on there, and we're going to talk about due dates. I think in just a second. So I think that's on one of my slides. I feel like that's coming up. As for grading and feedback, you can leave comments. That's built into Classroom. There's a space to leave comments on students' work. You can leave overall comments as a whole. Like you can comment essentially like on the whole file. You know, like great job. I really liked the way that you start out your introduction and the way you conclude at the end. You can, you know, leave comments as a whole. You can also add, I'm calling them pinned. That's not what they're called in Google. There's not really a name for them in Google, but you can attach, you can just like highlight a section and leave a comment on that section, or highlight a word and leave a comment on that word, or highlight a picture, an image, and leave a comment on that image. You can like essentially tack it onto a specific thing. And then again, any co-teachers in the class can both see any comments that were left and leave comments. So you could certainly, you know, divide up, you know, if you had a special education teacher and they wanted to see or be part of a student with an IEP's work, if they're a co-teacher in the class, they can see any comments you've given that student, and then they can also add their own comments. Learning also happens when we learn from mistakes. So feedback is meant to be a loop. A lot of times traditionally, we often experience feedback as I turned the thing in, the teacher graded it, wrote the score on the top, and gave it back, and that was done, and it was it. But that's not really so much of a loop. And so one of the things you can do in Classroom is you don't have to give their work a grade. You can return it without a grade on it. And Alice Keeler, if you've never heard of Alice Keeler, she's got a lot of really great resources around using Google tools, and especially Google Classroom for instruction, for teaching. She taught middle school math and just has a lot of really great resources. But what she suggests is leaving feedback on a student's assignment, returning the assignment to them without a score, having them respond to the feedback and turn it back in, and then she'll return it with the score. So it's like that loop of like, I want you to read the feedback I left and think about it and respond to it, or maybe make a change or something like that to your work, and then turn it back in, and now I'll give you the score. That's that feedback loop, and that's how we learn, is we learn from making mistakes and someone saying, oh no, actually it should go this way, now you try. So just again, kind of a suggestion, something that you can do. I did mention the grades tab earlier. The grades tab by default is off. Students can't see it. I'd recommend to leave it off. Again, Synergy is the district grade book. That's where parents have access to Synergy via parent view. You know, the Google Classroom gradebook does have some interesting features, but it really can be hard to keep both things correct. So I would just totally ignore that grades tab. I wouldn't do anything with it. There's settings in the little cog or gear in the upper right-hand corner to like make it visible to students, and I just would not touch those. I would leave them alone. Again, if you don't touch those settings, students can't see it. They don't even know that there's grades happening. Like they don't know that there's a grade book inside the classroom. I briefly touched on it earlier. There is a Synergy Classroom integration where you can tie your Google Classroom to your Synergy gradebook. Again, generally recommended for like intermediate, like people who have some familiarity with Classroom, but basically what you do in one shows up in the other. So if you make an assignment in Classroom and your stuff is tied, that assignment shows up in Synergy. If you make an assignment in Synergy, that assignment shows up in Classroom. So there's, we generally, again, recommend for like a little bit more experienced, advanced, intermediate users of Classroom, just because sometimes what you do in Synergy like shows up in Classroom, you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. That can catch you by surprise. But again, if you're an adventurous spirit and you don't mind getting surprised sometimes, go for it. There's no, test or anything like to make sure that you have the right skills to use the integration. Anybody can use it. So I've got it linked there. Allison also put it in the chat for everybody. So feel free, if that's something you're thinking about, check it out. Just have grace with yourself and be like, oh, I posted something I didn't mean to. No big deal, Okay. The stream is, again, that first place that you go to in Classroom. And so it's the first thing students see. There's no way to change that. Everybody always sees the stream first in a classroom. It's really great for announcements or reminders. If you post an announcement or reminder in the stream, students get an email. They can go in and turn emails off. I find that most students don't know how to turn the emails off, but they can. So if they've turned emails off, then they won't get an email from you. But that can be, again, a way to like kind of help students build that skill. I know that in general, students historically have not been great about checking their email, but that's something, again, kind of a life skill, like how we've all had to learn how to check our email and like stay on top of our email. That's a life skill to work on with students as well. Announcements and reminders can also be scheduled in advance. We talked about assigning, like posting an assignment tonight and scheduling it to like show up for people tomorrow. Reminders you can do the same. So I can write a reminder on Friday afternoon that I want to go out on Monday, and Classroom will automatically do it for me if I schedule it. There are different levels of settings and permissions within the stream. You can set it up so that students can make comments, can ask questions, they can post their own announcements. You can also close it down so that students can't add anything, they can only comment, that kind of stuff. You can also turn it off if they can't comment at all. So there's a lot of options as to like what shows up in the stream, who can write into the stream, where they can write in the stream. And so that's just something you kind of figure out for yourself what you want students to be able to do. You can mute individuals. So if you want to allow your students to be able to comment and ask questions, that's usually a really great use of the stream, is that you can post a reminder and then students can comment to it and be like, I don't understand, this is due on Monday, or, they can, again, ask questions that you can respond to. But if you have students who are misusing the comments, they're commenting inappropriate things or aren't using it appropriately, you can also mute individuals without taking away that access for everyone. So there's just different levels of permissions you can do within that stream if you're interested in really utilizing that stream for all the things that you could. Okay, due dates. I did say I would talk about due dates. You can set due dates on an assignment in Classroom. So assignments, because they're things that students turn in, can have a due date. Like an announcement doesn't have a due date, but like an assignment does. Due dates can cause anxiety, right? We're all kind of in this weird flux mode. There's like a weird mesh of like personal lives, but also professional or school lives all in one space. Family members may need us to do things. There's all sorts of stuff happening. So due dates can cause anxiety for some students. But due dates also feed different spaces within classrooms. So like I showed you that upcoming work section on the front of the stream, that is fed by the due dates that you put in assignments. If you don't put a due date on something, it's not going to show up there. Regarding email summaries, you saw also, it says like what work is coming up or what work is missing. That's fed by the due dates you put on it. Classroom also sends reminder emails to students saying, remember, your work is due tomorrow. That's fed by that due date you put on the assignment. And there's also a Google, every classroom has its own Google Calendar, and that will, it will put like an event on the day that the thing is due and say that this is due on this day. So it's really good actually to use the due dates, even though they can cause anxiety for some students. It is really good because it feeds all those different informational places. But what's really important is just to have a conversation with students and families about due dates. Are your due dates firm? Can they turn things in? Is there a grace period? If they turn it in within 2 days, is it still full credit? What's the penalty? Is it a 10% off every day? Is it you have a week after and then I start taking percentages off? If students need more time, can they ask for it? How do they do that? Is there a form they submit? Do they just email you? Think about some of those routines and just have those conversations with families. Like I said, due dates are really good because they feed so many informational places, but you just also want to kind of, again, have that conversation that like, yes, it says it's due on Monday, but if you turn it in by Wednesday, totally fine. The other thing is if you have students with really, with significant due date anxiety, you can use that differentiate feature where you can reuse the assignment. So it's the same assignment, use that reuse post button within your own classroom to reuse your own assignment and assign it only to that student and give it a different due date. And then that student can see, okay, I have another week to do that. So there's lots of ways, again, to kind of make space for students that are having due date anxiety. But I still would encourage you to use due dates because it just feeds so many informational pieces within classroom for families and for students. Okay, lots of talking. Chat check. I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of share, again, get some ideas from others. If you want to, if you don't have any idea yet, that's also totally fine. There's no pressure to have an answer right now. But type your answer to the chat if you'd like. What is your policy? What might your policy be for due dates in your classroom? Are they firm? What's the grace period? How should students let you know? All of that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna give you a few, like a minute or so to kind of type in what you're thinking around due dates within classroom. That's a really great point, Virginia. That if you're co-teaching with someone else, you're going to want to check in so that you're both giving the same message to students and to families. It's a great. Flexible but tending to acknowledge patterns. That's good. When I was in 7th grade, and I know none of you will ever believe this, but when I was in 7th grade, I used to tell my math teacher that I didn't understand the homework and that's why it wasn't done. And that's not true. I definitely understood it and just didn't feel like doing it. So there is that point of like that balance of having a heart and like understanding and being reasonable, but also acknowledging the fact that this is a pattern, it's happening every day, and maybe we need to figure something else out. Yeah, that's the, there's lots of different ways to do due dates and how you handle late work and that kind of stuff. When I was a teacher, I allowed students to turn in any late work for 50% credit at any point in time in the grading period. So I didn't care if it was like 3 weeks old and they did it, they could get half credit for it. So again, it just kind of is up to you what feels right to you, what makes sense for your students. Different ages can have different policies for sure, and even different populations and groups, depending on what your particular students are dealing with at home, depending upon how what level of a class is, if it's an AP class versus if it's a freshman algebra 1, like different things are gonna have different grading policies. So yeah, thank you, Robert, for sharing Alice Keeler. I love Alice Keeler. I think just because I feel like she really gets the balance of like reality and the the goals we strive for. So I feel like there are lots of teacher blogs out there that are like, oh, in my classroom, the students all sit in their desks and they have these beautiful little, things in the middle with like different supplies and there's always markers and stuff in there, right? But I feel like Alice Keeler is really real, and she's like, no, that's a lot of work. You should do this instead. Like, I just feel like she really gets it. So I don't know if you can tell, but I love Alice Keeler. So thank you, Robert, for sharing her her website. Thank you. Okay. We're done at 4:30, right? I think. Is that correct, Allison? Anyone else? Thumbs up or nodding? Yeah, I'm getting some nods that 4:30 is when we're ending.
4:20.
4:20. Okay, great. We are perfectly on track then. I've got some tips and tricks linked here. I don't want to go through all of them. We've actually talked about a lot of them so far, but I've got some things, some kind of tips and tricks you're welcome to kind of check out. There is a to-do page you can look at in Classroom. We talked about saving, scheduling things. You can also save things as a draft. You can post to multiple classes at once. So like I always structured my Google Classroom classes for each period. I taught high school. And so, if Spanish 1 with periods 3, 4, and 6, I could post the same thing to them at once instead of doing it 3 times. This is actually another Alice Keelerism, using private comments instead of Google Docs for short submissions. So she realized like she'd have students write out, submit their topic sentence for an upcoming paper, right? And she realized that if she had them write that topic sentence in a Google Doc, she had to open up 30 Google Docs, which just took forever, she felt like. And so inside an assignment, there's that private comment space, and you can have students submit their thing if it's short via private comments, and then you don't have to open up anything. It's like right inside a Classroom. So I've linked to her blog post there about that, and I just thought that was like genius. I was like, yeah, opening up 30 Google Docs does suck. That's awful. And then I also have some examples over here of some assignments. Again, thinking about that equity of opportunity and the things that we ask students to do. What are some different types of ways you can use Classroom to really get rich learning opportunities for students. So I've got those links there for you. And again, you can come back to this deck at any time. It will permanently exist. I have no intention of putting it anywhere else. It's for you. It's not for me. So great. I'm going to go ahead and start moving into some closing moves. We would love to hear your feedback. So much like the sign-in, you can use your phone to scan that barcode, or Allison just put it into the chat. You can actually click on that link in the chat, and that will allow you to answer the feedback questions. Even though you as a new teacher will not come to NTO next year, you won't be a new teacher anymore next year, we do try and make new teacher orientation better and better every single year. This is our first year going virtual, so it might be virtual next year. And so we'd love to hear your feedback, love to hear your thoughts, how we can make it better and improve it every single year so that every NTO is always the best one we can possibly give to our new teachers. And then once you're done doing that, I wanted to give you just some time to share in the chat. If you had any aha moments, you're like, oh my goodness, like I think of like that private comments instead of opening the Google Doc, like that was like mind blowing to me when I heard that. So any like aha, like, oh man, amazing moments, like I didn't even think of that. If you have any like lingering deeper types of questions, like I wonder how I could have students, do artwork, and like, or if you have like just like those like deeper questions that don't necessarily have like, oh, you click on this type of answer. It's like a lingering deeper question you're thinking about. And then at SFUSD, we often make space at the end of meetings and trainings for celebrations and appreciations, just as a chance to really look at the positives and to appreciate the people around us that are helping us learn. I would like to go ahead and add that I really appreciate all the ideas and things that you all shared. You had some really amazing ideas. So I just want to give a space for that. So if you, once you felt that feedback, if you'd like to go ahead and choose one of those three, an aha moment, a lingering deeper question, or a celebration appreciation to put in the chat, we'd love to give you space for that.
And I'm just going to make mention for a couple of other things because I know you are all getting so much thrown at you in these 2 days. But if you want more, I've already linked in there the Webinars and Professional Learning website where you'll have opportunities for office hours, webinars, workshops, PLCs that are coming up. And then there's Digital District Day, which Jessica is probably going to address. And I have the link to the website in there as well.
Yeah. Digital District Day. Allison and I are essentially the planning team. So if you get an email about Digital District Day from the planning team, it's from me or Allison. But Digital District Day is our district's annual technology conference. This year, we already have 3 times twice the number of registrations as we've had in past years. For whatever reason, people are really interested in learning about technology this year. Crazy, right? But it's not too late to join. It happens 1 week from today. We have Dina Simmons as our keynote speaker. We're going to end with a closing panel with district leaders, where district leaders are going to answer some questions about that people will submit to them. So go ahead and join us. The best way to do it is actually to go to the DDD website. You'll find a link there to RSVP. Once you RSVP, and you don't need an SFUSD email address, once you RSVP with either your SFUSD or whatever personal email address you're using right now, once you RSVP, you'll be able to have access to SCED. It does take about 30 minutes or so to get access to the SCED. You're using SCED for NTO right now, same idea. But you can sign up for sessions. Rebecca Hare is doing a session about like 3D thinking and making learning and thinking visible with like 3D projects. There's so many cool things happening. I'm doing another session on Google Classroom. So if you're like, this Google Classroom was great, I want to hear it again and a little bit slower with more time to work on stuff, you're welcome to sign up for my session. But Digital District Day is, I cannot recommend it enough. So it's 100% just like MTO is. I highly recommend that you check it out. Thank you, Allison, for bringing that up. I'm going to go back a slide and talk about our Google resources. So today you saw some resources for Google Classroom, both for families, like around guardian email summaries, and for teachers. We also have just like general, like the general Google website. I think it's resources, SFUSD resources, somewhat Google and SFUSD resources. I don't remember what it's called. But it's resources that we have created and pulled together, and you can search for resources based on tool. So you're like, oh, Google Slides, slide decks. I think I want to use that. There's like a page on Google Slides for teachers. We also have resources for families about specific tools. So if you're like, well, I'm going to use, just to borrow something I talked about in a session earlier today, Google My Maps. I'm going to use Google My Maps with my families or with my students. There's a page you can give to families, and it's on the district website, so it auto-translates to the language they need. You can give that page to families as they're helping their student with Google My Maps. So we've got resources for employees, resources for families. This next blue bubble here, this navy blue, is Google for Instruction. And that, again, focuses more on like instructional practices. Like I want to look at collaboration and what Google tools would I use for collaboration. I want to think about projects. I want to do some sort of project. What Google tools can I use to manage like a bigger project? Stuff is all in there within Google for Instruction. I recommend poking around that too. And then the last bubble here is submitting a help desk ticket. And I'm going to actually go down here, how to get help. When something is broken or not working, the help is your best bet to get it fixed, because when you submit a ticket, they actually like get sent out to the team that it belongs to. So like if you have something that's not working about like your login, you're not able to log in for some reason, when you submit the ticket, the help desk ticket, it actually gets sent to the server team to fix that problem. Instead of like you emailing me and I don't fix that thing, you know, I do trainings, and so then I have to try and find the person. The help desk is like the best way to get your thing like sent to the team that it needs to go to get fixed. So you can call them, but you can also, if you go to this help.sfusd.edu, in the upper, I think it's right-hand corner, there's a button that says submit a new request. And you can click on that, explain it. Screenshots are always really great if you're getting an error message. If you include a screenshot, we can actually solve your problem usually a lot faster. So if you have screenshots of what's happening, that's usually really helpful, but help desk is your best bet to get help on that. If you have questions around teaching with tech tools, or if you are looking for more PD, Allison shared the webinars page with you. We also have a PD calendar. The digital backpack are the different apps and tools that are approved for use with students. They're ones that have been vetted for safety and that work well with Google logins, that work with Clever. Clever is a way for students to sign in. And even like little kids can use like a badge to sign in instead of having to type in a username and password, because that's really hard for a kindergartner to type in. So the digital backpack is full of apps and stuff. And then I've actually, help desk, you can also get, if you want like a thought partner, like I'm thinking, I want to do a project and I want it to, you know, I'm trying to think of like what's the best tool for this. You can actually submit a help desk ticket that gets routed to our digital learning team, which Allison and I are on. And somebody will be in touch to help you out with, to help kind of be a thought partner for your project or the thing you're trying to do. So that is, we're done 3 minutes early. If you have any questions or anything else, you're welcome to unmute, stick around. If you're totally like wiped out for the day and you want to be done, it was a pleasure to meet you today and to talk to you. And thank you so much for sharing all of your great ideas. We really enjoyed speaking with you today. So again, if you have a question, feel free to unmute and stick around. Otherwise, it was very nice to see you.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Sorry to bother you. That was fantastic thing. I just want to ask you, I'm not technology savvy. That code that you had in the beginning, what do I do with it? I copied the URL. What do I do with it though? Do I go and take a picture of it?
Which URL? What is
you know,
it?
for the sign-in.
Oh, yeah. So you want to you paste that URL into your browser, and then you'll answer the questions it asks you.
Oh, I see. And then the 2 sessions that I didn't get it, is there a way I can go back and get them or anything like that, or what do I do?
Yeah. So once you answer the questions for this session, and submit, then you can actually put that link in again in the browser, and then re-answer some questions for the other 2 sessions. So we'll end up filling out that same form 3 times.
Wait, I'm sorry, just a minute. You broke up just for a second. Hold on, I'm on my phone. Really. So after I submit it, the links for the other classes will come up?
So you'll use the same link and then you'll answer the questions about another class, and then use that same link again and answer the questions about the last class.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm muted. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm not sure if I'm muted. You can hear me. Okay, great. So first I want to say thank you. I know I'm Allison and Jessica, right? I think I'm saying it right. Yeah. So I taught over the summer Google Classroom, and the coordinator of the program was like, "Oh, just go on Google Classroom and figure it out. It'll be fine." And I'm like, "No!" So I literally learned on the fly. And so I wanted to take this because my question was, how did I teach math? And I noticed the difference because I used to assign them forms to answer questions, but then I couldn't grade it, right? As opposed to blank quiz. When I used blank quiz, it gave me an opportunity to grade it, and they can see the grade, etc. So, how do you? Is blank quiz the only one you can use to give them a grade, or is that is there something else that I could use other than just blank quiz? Am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense.
Within Google Forms, you can turn any form into a quiz. So that
Oh.
blank quiz starts it with that setting turned on, but you can turn any form into a quiz. It's in the settings. I think it's in the keyword in the form.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. So I know a lot of people in the tech world, and I was thinking about inviting them to speak into the classroom. Now, is there a process where do I go through you guys, or is there a district process where I would have to request if it's okay or not?
No, you.
Okay.
Pretty good general practice to check in with like your administrator to let them know you're inviting in people, but nothing you have to do to get them approved by any means. I would recommend. Do you know if you're going to use Meet or Zoom yet as your video conferencing platform?
I think most likely Zoom. Yeah, but I guess it all depends on the, like, it's, you know, I have friends on Facebook, Microsoft, so depending on what they use as well. But I wondered if I had to go through you guys, depending on their technology, I have to adapt it to our technology.
Yeah, so what I would say is pick the tool that you want to use for the whole year. Whether it's Meet or Zoom, doesn't matter, you can choose. If you're going to use Zoom, by default, your Zoom account does not let people without an SFUSD email in. So a lot of people experience that today where they couldn't get into things because they don't have the email address. And so you have to just request that the district office change that setting and allow you to have non-SFUSD people join.
That's great. Good to know. Yeah, thank you.
Meet doesn't have that restriction. Anybody can join a Meet that has the Meet link. So if you're using Meet, you don't have to worry about that. But if you're going to use Zoom for the year, you want to get that essentially like unlocked for your to let non-SFUSD in.
And Domenico, what I just added into the chat was a link that's the guide to virtual meetings with students. So you'll also want to take a look at that, because there are certain things that a guest speaker will be able to do versus not be able to do, just in terms like they won't be able to record the session if students are present. And you just to be safe in terms of legal issues, you'll need to go through that process before you even initiate any meetings with outsiders in the space, so to speak.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Thank you.
I just had a question for you guys. So I'm a little bit confused just in pairing my role with like sessions that are helpful to the role and the tasks that I have. So I'm going to be an RSP teacher in an elementary school. So I'm most likely be doing a lot of push-in. And so the general education teacher, I mean, I'm not going to like steal the show from them, and so it seemed like, I mean, they did try to, like my training program, Pathway did try to tell us what sessions might be most helpful, but they were also giving advice to like SDC teachers. And so you know, some of the things, like it looked like the teacher view or the view, whatever that program's called, this one maybe, like I don't know how much I'm going to be creating a classroom myself, or like a project myself, or I'm not doing grades, I'm not doing attendance, like all of these things. And so I'm having a little difficulty finding like what's most applicable if I'm doing like mostly push in. I mean, I might be doing some pull out, and then I could use classroom or other things. But yeah, I just thought maybe you guys might have some thoughts about it, because you know a lot more about the technology things that are on the plate than I do.
Yeah, I can see with you doing push-in that it would be helpful for you to know how to use Classroom to like assign something to 1 or 2 students, that like ability to like just the 1 or 2 students you're working with, or however
Yeah,
many,
you mentioned.
whatever it is, to do it with those. So I think that is still useful for you. I'd also recommend checking out a session about virtual meetings with students, because more than likely you will meet with students virtually to talk to them or help them or work with them.
That's the first session that I went to, but then yeah, since then, I mean, I also did the deeper tools, I guess, or the digital tools for deeper learning. That one was actually pretty confusing. I mean, there are a lot of tools that I don't know anything about, but they kind of had us like creating a project, and I'm like, I don't think I am going to independently be creating projects necessarily. And so it was just like trying to graft on, so it's not like unhelpful to kind of generally know about things, but I don't know what's most specifically applicable to kind of doing the supportive role that I have, rather than like having a class of my own per se.
Yeah, you might also want to do, what grade levels do you work with?
K through 5 or TK through 5, the elementary.
I'd also check a Seesaw one.
Yeah, I have Seesaw on for tomorrow. So yeah, I do have that one. I just like went into a few different sessions for this last one, trying to be like, oh no, this one says I'm in the wrong spot because I'm not going to have a roster, and I'm not in the right spot here because I'm not going to be doing that, you know, so.
Also, Amanda, next week, or I guess it's actually this week, never mind, when we have webinars, life is a blur, there's one webinar that Dan Frost, I believe, is going to facilitate setting norms in online environments, and that would probably give you a nice just overview of practices to establish when interacting with students in a distance learning environment. But I agree with Jessica, like being a co-teacher in a Google Classroom with the primary classroom teacher will give you the ability to differentiate activities, but to also see how you might adapt your activities and just assign it to those students. Those are my first, and then any of the other Google tools. I don't know if you attended the one that Jessica did this morning. I think we have that scheduled again for tomorrow at this same time, the 3 to 4:20 time slot. That will give you a broad snapshot of many, many different tools that teachers might use, like slides or docs or sheets.
So that's just called Google Tools.
Yeah.
Learning. Yeah, Google Tools for teaching and learning.
Yeah. But Seesaw, I think Seesaw and Class is really going to be a tool that is used with the elementary levels a lot more.
Yeah, okay. So this Google Classroom, and then the Seesaw that I signed up for, and the Google tools in general you recommended. Okay. Thank you so much for your thoughts about that. I was feeling a little lost in trying to navigate because there's a lot of different courses. Thanks.
Quick question for you guys. I don't know, are you guys providing an in-service for Zoom or Meet, whatever because I'm familiar with it, but I thought I'd like to be, I want to make sure I'm consistent with my messaging, the words, the terminology, as well as how to guide the students so it's consistent with the whole district.
Yeah, we have some upcoming webinars for anyone who wants to join. We're also having, I think there's a virtual meetings with students session at Digital District Day too in the afternoon. So that would talk about norms, different tools, all of that kind of stuff. That would be more of like a comprehensive thing, whereas like we have webinars more on specific tools. Like I'm doing a webinar on Google Meet later this week using Meet with students. I think Devorah's got one on Zoom. Is that right, Allison?
Yes, correct. And we have webinars scheduled, I believe, twice a day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, and then also next Friday. So if you just want to like keep your head in the game and just consume, then you can stick with it. Once school starts, you're going to have a different energy level, undoubtedly. We will be continuing our webinars and all kinds of other professional learnings, all virtually, obviously, but we don't have that schedule yet because we are not clear at what the school schedules are going to be like.
Yeah.
Maybe you know, we just haven't been told yet.
We also have recordings posted, so you can also see webinars we did in the spring. Those recordings are also posted. You can certainly watch. What's nice is that I do know that I talk fast, and so like the Google Meet one, you can actually slow me down to 75% speed and listen to me at a normal human speed, and pause me whenever you feel like you need to.
Thank you. I really appreciate that link for the webinar. I didn't know that was a possibility. I was Googling it and YouTubing it, but I thought, but I want to be consistent with what the district is saying. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
We got you.
Thank you both very much.
All right. Take care.
Sure. Good luck
Bye.
with stuff. I'm sure we'll see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.